Sit back, relax, and enjoy, ladies and gentlemen. It is the fourth episode of the Rugby League Lounge Weekly Show. How are you guys all doing? It's Luke here. I don't know if I ever actually properly introduced myself. Obviously, a lot of you guys know who I am because a lot of you guys are my friends and I really appreciate the support. But yeah, if I haven't, my name's Luke. And yeah, I love rugby league, and obviously you're probably familiar with my face by now. But hey, I've just had a bit of a realization that I might not have properly introduced myself, or we've got actually, before we start, man, we almost doubled our followers on Instagram. A big thank you needs to go out to Clarkey, Dane Clark from Clarkey's column. You know, everyone knows who he is, and he gave me a shout out. He basically said, one of his, a good page to follow was mine, and yeah, to get that from him, that kind of, word from him was a huge honour. So cheers, Clarky, and cheers everyone that's jumped on board. If you're watching this, the YouTube show, I obviously post little snippets throughout the week too. That's probably more likely what you guys are going to be watching rather than YouTube show, which is completely fine. It's a good way to use IGTV and also continue to produce stuff on my Instagram. I'm having a ball. I'm recording this early. I'm recording this on the Friday, and we'll hopefully have this uploaded on the Sunday. I'm just away for 2 weeks, so hopefully I can get something up next week as well, but I'm just doing this a bit earlier so I get something up. I'm going away for a course, so yeah, that is the reason I'm doing it now. And yeah, I'll be still releasing Instagram content too. Hopefully we will have another knockout tournament at the start of next week, and we'll be doing our lineup as well at the start of Feb. I've got something in the brain ticking away, but I'll probably put out a comment suggestion as well. A way for you guys to suggest your thoughts too. But yeah, anywho, we'll get to this. Enough of me babbering. And this question was, I was a bit disappointed in myself actually, because it's a great question, and it's something that I want to know more of, and I wish I could give this guy a better answer, but here we go. And it's from Brett Rees, a greymouth person like myself, so shout out to Brett, showing great support every week. You love it, mate. He asked, I'd like to know more about the Super League war. Not sure if you look much into it, but yeah, could you share your thoughts on this? Yeah, man, I'll share a few thoughts, and it's a great question. And first off, I did a post ages ago about the top 5 documentaries I'd like to see in rugby league, and this was the top of my list. I've heard podcasts, I've obviously know a bit about that season. That was the season Joey Johns set up arguably one of the greatest grand final moments, or just moments in general in rugby league, when he set up Albert to seal the grand final. But yeah, like, why did the Super League war happen? Well, what I've heard and what I've looked into, basically there was a bit of a what's the word? There was an issue between some of the players and the clubs with the ARL at the time in general, and obviously it's formed to be the NRL today, and they wanted to kind of expand. A lot of it was, as we see, it's very New South Wales dominated as it is. I think over half the teams are New South Wales, but even back then there was a lot more Sydney teams compared to the rest of Australia. I don't know how many teams exactly were, but basically they were looking at getting the New Zealand team in. I think Adelaide Rams were there as well, and and kind of the rumours as well, and there was a couple others as well. And basically what they were going to do is get those new teams in, and then the Sydney teams that are struggling, well, you either have to merge, or if you're struggling, you're going to be died off. And obviously they weren't too happy with that, these Sydney clubs. They're like, what the heck? And Super League come in to do with like a broadcasting deal as well, and they basically offer these guys, wait, hang on, we're going to basically give you guys a chance to earn more money, have more chance of sponsorship deals, and hopefully put you on a bigger platform. And obviously, it split the competition into two. So you had the ARL and the Super League in 1997, and it was like, and off the top of my head, I can't remember which clubs went where. I know Sharks and Brisbane were the grand final in the Super League comp, but it only lasted a year. It was and majorly it was to do a lot with money. It was to do a lot with people staying loyal and kind of staying strong to their club, saying we don't care, we'll still work on the side, stuff like that. yeah, obviously I'd recommend watching Fox League video. I think it was Matty John's podcast, Paul Kent, Blocker Roach, and obviously Matty Johns himself were talking about it, but it basically didn't work out. No one made any profit on it. People weren't going to games. So basically, I read a story just before that they basically had to give away tickets, and yeah, they had all these big plans. They were going to make it, this big commercial kind of deal where they were trying to sell. The Super League had all these great ideas. It was one of these things that was, fair enough, make your money. I think compared to international sports and Australia and New Zealand in general, we're not earning the big bucks like the Americans and the Europeans and the footballs and the basketballs and all sorts. So the execution was poor. The idea was right. But it was just a shame. Like I said, I'd love to watch a documentary on it. Obviously, I'm kind of saying this as a real outsider guy that's kind of obviously just done the research and all that. A lot of the stuff I read, it does confuse me a little bit, so to get like a visual kind of image of it would be very helpful for me. But yeah, it's an interesting situation, and obviously it would be interesting to see if we didn't have that Super League and how the game would look today. I don't know if it would look any different or look way different, or if the Super League war would have just been extended to a different period in time. Great question, Brett, and wish I could have given you more information, but I just recommend listening to a few pods and doing a bit of research because it's quite interesting yourself, so to look into yourself. So yeah, Bryce Morrow. Now, when I read this, Bryce, I thought, come on, mate, but I've actually done a little bit of a deep dive into this. But he said, would the Bunnies be as successful without the big three? Cody Walker, Adam Reynolds, and Damien Cook. No, Bryce. That's our first thought. Like, Bryce, no. You take away three of the best players out of any team and they're going to get weaker. But let's think about it this way. Damien Cook was there and he wasn't even the top hooker at the start. Obviously, you had Robbie Farah kind of in between that funny stage with him and the Tigers. He was there and didn't have the best form for the Rabbits. But he also had this young guy who's not that bad a footballer there, and Cameron McInnes, who they had to let go of. Ultimately, just to give a chance, give more game time, or they only probably felt the need to have one of them in him, and McInnes or Cook. So if they didn't have Cook, they'd have Cam McInnes, who, well, if the Rabbitohs didn't give Damien Cook a chance, it's crazy to say. Like, I think he's a top 10 player in this game still, off the top of my head. If they didn't give him a chance, do we see Damien Cook in a row? Now, there's a good chance, yes, we do. He just goes another class. But hey, it wasn't smooth sailing for Cook to get his spot. He's quite old. He definitely hit his, he come into the horizon of rugby league fans' minds pretty late. So, if without Cook, you got McInnes there, who, he's quality. If Cook's not there in Origin, is he the starting hooker? There's a good chance. Obviously, Kyrus had a great year this year, but you got Cam McInnes there. Could obviously be a lock. You got Cam Murray, but yeah. So you take away Cook. Obviously, you might still have Cam McInnes. I'd rather Cook than McInnes, but hey, still not bad. Cody Walker. Now think about it. Who used to be a Rabbitoh? Luke Keary. Now there was heaps of dramas, blah blah blah. But do you try harder to rekindle that relationship because you don't have a backup plan in Walker? You got to rely on Luke Keary. So yeah, you could potentially have Luke Keary, who has won 2 premierships. He was a Clive Churchill medalist, one of the best Clive Churchill medal performances I've seen. Probably one of the only ones where I've actually watched a game and it was pretty clear, and I was at this game, that was like, he is the Clive Churchill medalist. So there's been a lot of controversial ones. That one was not controversial for me. Nearly a flawless performance other than the intercept pass he threw to Josh Adokar. But for a Storm fan, and there wasn't many highlights as a Storm fan that night, I was very grateful. So cheers, Luke. So he could be there. And also Adam Reynolds, if he's not there, look, let's also deep dive a little bit here. Who was a guy that in 2017 was looking for a club, was on the outer because as soon as someone was coming to their club the next year? Mitchell Pearce. Now, because there's a halfback role vacant in South Sydney, do they make a bid for Mitchell Pearce? There's a good chance they do. And obviously, yeah, he'd end up at Newcastle, but look, at the time, you'd have to say Rabbitohs would be more appealing. Now, we're obviously very hypothetical here, but imagine if they are. Yeah, you're thinking, man, I got Luke Keary. He at the time he wasn't Origin or rep level, but he's potentially on the brink of it. You got Cam McInnes, who, he's probably on the brink of something too, and it's a great team around them. Like, yes, you take away their three best players, but you still got the Greg Inglis's. You got Sam Burgess. You've got a famous club. You've got Madge Maguire was still there as well, or maybe Seabold was just about to take over. But a lot of their foundation was still from that grand final winning side in 2014. So potentially, Bryce, if they didn't have Walker, Adam Reynolds, and Damien Cook, could they be better? Because could they have Luke Keary, Mitchell Pearce, and Kevin McInnes? I'm going to say no, because that is a lot of what ifs. But I saw the opportunity to do a little bit of unique thinking, as I can tend to do sometimes, and yeah, it got me to that. So hey, good question, Bryce. This is from, it looks like a new follower, Holdy and Harris 005. I'm sorry if I butchered that, mate. You've asked the question, will John Morris get sacked? Now, John Morris is in a position where a sacking is on the cards. There was a lot of sackings in 2020, which means I reckon there will be obviously a lot less this year, because a lot of coaches will either be in premiership winning circumstances where, unless they completely, like say you got guys that we think are going to be premiership level, end up not even making the 8, like, and very disappointing. They're the ones that are going to get sacked. And then there's guys that have come into new clubs where you got to give them a good season. Now, John Morris has been there for 3 seasons, and everyone he hasn't really, he's made the 8 each year, but they haven't hit the heights that they have when they had Shane Flanagan. But you got to think it's a different roster, and they're a lot younger now. And because of injuries and because of all sorts, John Morris is under the hot seat. Is it John Morris's fault? Not at all. It's not like I've loved everything John Morris has done. I haven't kind of seen them like embrace the old Sharks mentality, would you say? But look, he's done, but like, I've definitely kind of stepped back and thought, man, when you look at the card he's been dealt, he has done very well. Sean Johnson's in there on the side a lot, and when he was in the side, they were one of the best offensive teams, in the comp. Defensively, they've dropped off definitely, and when you look last year, they didn't beat a top 8 side, and they were 8th. So that's a bit alarming, but it's a tough one, this one, because look, if I had to pick where the Sharks are going to finish right now, I don't think they'll be in the 8. I think they'll be actually quite close to the bottom 4. Look, keep an eye on what John Morris does with Blake Brayley this year. And what I mean by that, it's this game, and I mentioned it quite a few times, the game has changed, and the hooker position is quickly becoming the most influential position in the game. And Blake Brayley is a run-first, opportunistic hooker. And yeah, he actually had a great end of the year. And as I'm talking now, it's one of these teams actually that I'm thinking, we're looking at these teams that have done heaps of new signings and thinking, yeah, we're going to put them in the 8. Like I've mentioned it for Warriors, Bulldogs, Titans, they're going to get better. But we're forgetting about these teams that haven't done that much, but we think there's opportunities for these teams to do good because they've got guys in Arsenal like Blake Brayley. Let's go to the Dragons, and if they put Ben Hunt at hooker, Anthony Griffin, Ben Hunt at hooker, please and thank you. That's where the game is going. These guys are able to make good plays, think fast at such a high speed in the ruck when there's heaps of space. Those are the type of players that can do damage. But overall, they're going to struggle because Sean Johnson is out for a while. I just love to see them improve on the defensive side of the floor. But it's one of the, but ultimately, if they don't succeed, there's a lot that's, they're still, like I said, they're still young. They're not going to have their best player for a long period of time. Look, should that be on John Morris? No. But if you just feel like his heart's not in it, then he will. If I had to pick, though, if he will get sacked. Look, Shane Flanagan will potentially, I think he can get registered again this year, I believe, or at the end of the season. And unless he's still with the Dragons, technically, he could potentially go back to the Sharks. And I remember Kyle was on a pod and said, yeah, he's looking for a club back in City. So, very high chance. Actually, if I had to put money on it, I personally wouldn't sack John Morris unless I believe it's warranted. But I do think, yes, and out of all the coaches, he is probably in, the worst position as a head coach at the moment, where it looks like that could be a decision. I hate to say that, but yes, I think, he will get sacked this year. That would be my prediction, but I hope I'm wrong. Man, I hope I'm wrong, because he doesn't deserve to. Well, yeah, unless, proven otherwise, but yeah, I think he will. Now, last question, and this has got a good one from Rugby League Modern Day Prince. What should the NRL do regarding the Nines? Now, let's focus on the NRL specifically. I've got a bit of a soft spot for the Nines because I went there with my dad to the first ever one in 2014. Absolutely loved it. I wish now that I was over 18. At the time, I think I was 16, so yeah, had a few beers with the old fella and kind of really soaked in the environment. But it was cool. Loved in Auckland. It was pretty packed out and, yeah, had a good energy about it. But, yeah, it's kind of obviously had a few years when it hasn't been on. And also, you went to Perth last year, and I don't really know if that really did as well as they had hoped. I think it's always a risk moving it to, even though they want to grow the game within Australia and potential expand to Perth one day with, I think they're called the Perth Pirates or something like that, or the something like that, Western Australia Pirates. It just didn't hit the same. Even watching it from the TV, and also didn't know what I hated about it. They paid because I think was it to do with the women's side of things? They only paid 2 pool games where there was 4 teams in each pool. So say, I think the Storm, Cowboys, Broncos were in a pool with someone else. Let's just throw the Eels out there. I don't think it was the Eels. But Storm, even though the Eels, Broncos, Cowboys were in their pool, they only versed the Broncos and the Cowboys. So what? Because I was making predictions, and then I was like, obviously thinking how many games, how they fare against each team. And I was like, I was looking at the time schedule, they're going to get through this real quick because they started real late, and that's why, because they played way less games. So I didn't like how they did that with it last year. Was it last year? It might have been. But I want to see it. I want to see it at a stadium that they know they can pack out. I love it to go back to Auckland, especially now because we are probably in the best position in terms of this COVID situation. I always lose track of how you guys are going over in Aussie. I'm not too sure how Brisbane are going. I know you guys had a little bit of a lockdown period there. I believe it was only for 3 days, but obviously Melbourne was in a bit of strife. Sydney's had its battles as well, but yeah, if I was to do it, I'd do it in a spot you'd get a good crowd. I would, and you'd have to do it in the off season, I believe. And look, at the end of the day, I'm okay with the Stars not always attending. It's actually a good opportunity to see these young fellas, because last year, it was a good way to see the speed and talent of Hamiso. Cody Ramsey was another one. Tex Hoy as well. I remember Moses Lauta had a fantastic tournament a few years ago before he was an NRL player. Plenty of others that have escaped my mind. Scott Drinkwater, it was a good way to introduce him to the Cowboys, to the Cowboys fans. Obviously, he'd been an NRL player, but yeah, it put his talents on full display. So, yeah, and some athletes, even though you're a great rugby league player, an Origin caliber league player, there might be guys that haven't played first grade that are better than you at nines because it's a different game. So I'm okay with it where it is, and if players want to pick and choose, obviously you got the All-Star game to deal with as well. Ultimately, I do think you can have both, but I think the All-Star game, and it's more credit to the All-Star game than the diminish of the nines, is because now the All-Star game is similar to Origin. Now, no, not similar to Origin as in a spectacle, but because they have something to play for. When it was Indigenous versus World All-Stars, obviously Indigenous boys were proud, but the World guys, they'll just, you voted them in, you put them in a team. They had nothing to play for, just a game of footy. Now you're playing for who you are, where you come from, the people you are proud to represent, and that's what an All-Star game will now overshadow the nines. But I love to see the nines still going. Also, which you have asked about the NRL specifically, but to grow the game internationally, we're getting there. Obviously, the islands is getting great, but do we? And this is something rugby league just needs to work out in general. Do we want to keep growing the games, and how do we grow? Do we want to keep growing the game? So, and how do we do this, and where do we want to target? Now, these nations that are emerging in Europe, in America, so on and so forth, even some other islands that maybe can't, field the greatest teams, do they want to do an emerging nines tournament throughout the year? Now, financially, look, it might be a bit of a sacrifice. They might not be earning much, but it might be a good way to introduce them to the sport. Maybe the guys, you do a few tournaments like similar to Sevens. So you start with just emerging nations. Don't worry about us, New Zealand, Australia, so on and so forth. Maybe you can make it NZ19s, Australia under 19s, or under 18s. They maybe join the circuit as well. So we continue to kind of get our talent kind of into the circuit of things as well, and just add more competition to it. But is this a way to expand the international game as well? And obviously they're going to have to field less players. And obviously this might not be able to go ahead now because of the situation we are in, because obviously the Sevens has stopped because of the COVID situation. But when we get back to normal as we can be, do we potentially use this to grow the game? A shorter form of the game, a fun version of the game, and we hopefully get broadcast rights to the likes of ESPN's can grow the game. Hey, it's one of those things, there's probably a lot of barriers to do this, but if we want to kind of get to the status of one day slowly creeping up the rugby as an international game, now it's going to be a long process, but it could happen. But maybe we're really happy with what's happening with the islands, with just, the big nations, us, England, Australia, that, hey, it'll get there slowly. The World Cup is expanding. We've got the likes of Greece in it this year. We've had Lebanon in the World Cup in previous years. I think Jamaica's been kind of on the route and on the cusp of it as well, isn't it? So the game is growing internationally, but is this a way to even kind of just take a stab in the dark and maybe, speed up the process too? So I'm a big fan of the nine, so I hope there is a way to do it as well. And that's it for me, guys. Thank you very much. Obviously, I really love doing this, like I say, every week. Hope you guys are all having a fantastic week too, and keep up the support. Going to be doing a few cool things over the season, but always stay tuned and always DM me suggestions and feedback too. If there's certain things you dislike about the page or the videos, let me know and I'll make those improvements. So awesome guys, have a good week, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.